and
Okay. So, sorry, if you want to proceed with the introductory remarks, then we are good to go.
yes, absolutely on that. Okay, thanks everyone. Thanks for joining this session. So let me give you some background. Right? The Indian government is also pushing robotics and AI for the class of 9 and 10, and going forward because everything is moving towards digital technology. You can see from that where we starting from when for during the Corona time itself. So we extrovertics are closely working with ICSC and CBSE boards, and we are helping teachers to empower and give a training to them. Okay, not only for the trainings we are providing during this package, we are also giving a 1 year free support on them. So means we will give you the proper assistance for the entire year while you are taking your class in your schools. That is the biggest USP for us. Not only on them, it is a platform where you will get ample job opportunity to change your to get more offers from multiple schools as well, because we are connected with the multiple schools. So we want to create a platforms where teachers can train them, can empower them, skill them on over there, and then they can excel in their careers. On top of them, we are also coming with multiple schemes for our company perspectives as well. Okay, so where something like you can create your own projects, you can develop your own projects, you can do a videos and submit over to our teams over there, and we will pay you for all those stuff. And no new things are also coming to which will help teacher fraternity to earn more from these platforms itself, right? So we from that particular note, over to the Saurabh sir to start the sessions over here. Okay,
Yeah, thank
thank
you
you.
so much, sir, for the wonderful introduction. So, as sir mentioned, specific terms in today's era, what is required and what is not required. So, each and everyone is getting the same feedback from the school itself and from around the places that these particular sections for AI and robotics is going to become one of the major subject later on. I believe it is already implemented in several schools, but none of not started throughout the country or in a full fledged. But yes, it is going to boom in few years, and further, many of these school are already started these courses specifically for class 9 and 10. So in terms of class 9 and 10, what we do have is the AI and robotics syllabus to cover. And further, throughout that journey, there are two separate stories to consider before proceeding into this chapter. So suppose if we talk in terms of the exact AI and robotics syllabus that you will probably already went through, maybe you already went through the entire content itself before joining this meeting today, that in AI and robotics, what we do have is the theoretical content and the practical based on our Python classes, right? So Python programming is involved and everything else is involved. But yes, there is much more need to be covered throughout the journey, because relying simply on the Python and AI stuff not going to help you in your classroom program. So from the teacher's point of view, you always have to come forward in terms of innovation, in terms of practical implementation of those things. Suppose if I talk in terms of robotics and if I try to explain the concept robotics in front of you guys today, then I need some of the practical setup to exactly elaborate in details, right? So for that case, what we need to have is a proper background on the core subject like the STEM, robotics, and AI. And as you all know, that STEM is all about science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, which help us learn the things practically, those things which are already being covered in your conventional classroom program. As a teacher, you have to explain and elaborate those stuff practically in front of your students. So what we do have with us in X Robotics, or what we can say through this platform, what you are going to learn. So first 10 minutes, I will invest first 10 minutes to help you understand the content and our way of execution for this particular subject. And then further, I will add on the value modules by giving the proper introduction for each and everything, and like the concept of robotics, AI, and other part for the STEM itself. And further, we'll see some of the practical implementation of those things, how you can accommodate those practical knowledge in your classroom program to help your student under the concept of different terms. For example, the degree of freedom, robotics, artificial intelligence, so many other stuff. So in case, like, if you guys do have any of the doubts in between, or any of the question if you want to ask, you can raise your hand, or even though you can just unmute yourself and ask the question directly, because this one, the first session itself, will be the introductory one, and also it should be the interactive one, so that the teacher can ask their own doubts and clarify those things in details. So to deliver those contents, what we do have, as we are moving towards the digital era, we are going to replace the conventional textbook from the market. Because suppose if I ask you to use the computer, to teach the computer in your classroom, and further there, if there is no computer involved in your classroom program, then there, that won't be that much effective in all the sense, right? So we need to use the computers in our computer class, then only that class will become effective. So similarly, to deliver the robotics content, what we do have is dedicated LMS portal, or we can call it as the resourcify, to access the resources in terms of robotics and artificial intelligence. So LMS stands for Learning Management System, and after enrolling to the course, you will receive the credential for the same, through which you can log in into the portal. Okay. After like logging into the system, you will land on to the dashboard page. So in your dashboard, you will see various kind of courses has been assigned to you, in which all of the courses, like for class 10, specifically if you are enrolled into this train the trainer program, then you will probably see this particular course material in your LMS portal, in which each and every topics is marked properly. On the left hand side, what we do have is the table of content for your teachers to take the reference, and also we do have series of topics to cover entire concept in overall sense. And yes, we do have that practical things related to the AI and robotics part. So if you want to jump into the direct syllabus for the artificial intelligence for the class 10th or class 9, we do have systematic arrangement for individual topics. So you will get introduction for data evolution of computer and roles, introduction to Python and uses, in which you will learn different type of operators, conditional statement, control functions, and all the necessary tools which you needed to be understand beforehand. And also we do have a detailed summary for individual topics for the robotics itself and the artificial intelligence part. And apart from that, we do have assignment series for the teachers, so that they can cope up with the exact details of the projects and other things which is required in your classroom program. For class 9 as well, we do have those same series of content. So it will be reflected on your dashboard portal under the robotics and AI for trainers. That is the paid courses you are going to take, and you willing to like continue with us same. So we do have several projects as well, through which we are going to implement this artificial intelligence and robotics classes in our section. So many of you do have one thing in common, that particular doubt, like many of the contents are the theoretical one in your syllabus itself. So how you are going to cover the practical part, and only the syllabus emphasizes on the uses of Python. Rather than Python, we don't have any other programming concept in that one. But in point of delivery, like if we talk in terms of the delivery in our classroom program to our students, then you must utilize some other tools, as the board members were mentioned during the demonstration classes. So they mentioned specifically to utilize some of the open source platform, and I believe you do have a proper idea of open source platform and what it is all about, right? So in case if you don't have, I will explain you that as well. So whenever we talk in terms of open source platform, we are referring to a place or a website where a person like educators, mentors, and the students can go freely like use those platform freely without paying anything. Those will be termed as an open source platform. And what type of open source platform we are going to utilize in our classroom program? The Tinkercad itself, and further we will use the MIT App Inventor to like build some of the IoT application. And also I will show you the application development today and some part of it, so that you will at least get the visualization what you are going to learn throughout the journey. And apart from this node and the MIT App Inventor platform and Tinkercad platform, we are going to cover the embedded C++ programming in our classroom program, so that it will be easier for you to cope up with each and every tools, like whatever the thing, even though the RGB LEDs and other components will be utilized for the same. And after embedded C++, you will learn the basic of Python, and you will learn how to install those things, how to use those programming environment. And further, we will help you with the project work, assignments, and everything. Even though you will you will receive the question papers from our side, the sample question from our side, which you can use further in your classroom program, so that a student will get benefit out of it. So let's discuss this thing in detail. And further, allow me to share my full screen, so that it will be easier for you to understand each and every concept today. Okay, but in I'm again repeating myself, in case if you find difficulties understanding any of the concept, then you can raise your hand, or you can ask your question in comment section or the chat section. And also you can directly unmute yourself to ask question and interact with me. There is no such condition where you will find yourself in a place that you cannot able to come forward and talk to me directly. So in this meeting also, in this classroom program also, you can do the same. So whenever we talk in terms of STEM, suppose if anyone asks you about what is STEM exactly and why we need to have this particular concept if we are teaching the AI and robotics part. So let me tell you the background of these things, so that you will easily understand why the AI and robotics does require the knowledge of these domain only. So STEM stands for science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And you well know why these four domain is crucial for your student as well as for yourself, right? Because science gives us the ability to understand more about our environment, and technology help us reduce our effort in different segment in our life, right? Further, engineering approach or an engineer is responsible to build those technology for us, right? And mathematics, obviously we need to have the mathematics. Okay, let me ask this question first, then I will explain the mathematics part, because that is crucial in this classroom program. So anyone from the teacher side, do you have any idea about the mathematics, why we need maths in our classroom program as a subject? Anyone from the teacher side, why you need to have the mathematics? You can unmute yourself, or if you find difficulties like speaking out the answer, then you can drop your answer in the chat section. There is no issue on that. So anyone from the teacher side? No? Okay, great. So we are talking about the mathematics because mathematics is one of the crucial subject for our student to have, right? Without mathematics, we are unable to explain different concept in different subjects, because we need some of the physical dimension to represent the values, we can say, and we have to use some of the numerical values to represent the exact quantity of different things around us, right? So that is why the maths is important, and overall this four domain is very crucial for the student as well as for the teacher. Okay, fine. So why we need to learn STEM and robotics? So we are utilizing robotics as a tool to further explain the concept of STEM. And in robotics, what we will go through three of the basic things. And what will be the three of the basic things through which we can build any of the robotics device or robot itself? So that will be our input device in terms of computer, and processing unit, and output device, right? So in robotics, we refer sensors as an input device, and further the processing unit will be called as the brain of robotic system, and output will be termed as the actuation and locomotion producing element in our journey. So if we are gathering the information from the sensor, and brain is responsible, like the brain itself in robotics is known as microcontroller. So if the brain is responsible to provide us the logical outcome or logic based outcomes, then obviously those outcomes will be produced using any of the output device in robotics, for example motors, right? So to accommodate these all three, what we need to have a proper body and the body part itself for the robotics structure. Suppose if you are making humanoid, then our robot will appear, look like something similar to the human being itself. But if you are making some of the car project which is more intelligent than the normal drivers and the other person, then yes, we can make the autonomous stuff using those things. But then why we are explaining you this? Because in robotics we do require some of the programmings, because programming is also involved in robotics, and through the programming actually we are trying to manipulate the data, right? We are taking the input from the sensor device and further processing it inside the brain, and after that providing the output in terms of actuation and locomotion. So robotics or robot does require that processing stuff. Okay, so in which human operator is involved to do the programming and write the logic based on the requirement. Then that is why we call these things as in two categories. We call these things under the two categories. One will be our manual robot, through which a manual operator will directly operate the robotics using switches, buttons and everything, joystick and others. And in autonomous, we will program this device, and further our robotics body will perform the action without any human interaction. But even though in autonomous, one programmer is involved to write the code for the robotics, right? And if we look into the definition of artificial intelligence, it is all about upgraded version of the robotics, or we can say that one of the tools which is upgraded, right, under the robotics itself. So in artificial intelligence, what we say exactly, that we are talking about one of the intelligent machine which are capable to take its own decision rather than us guiding the entire thing. So okay, so artificial intelligence actually refers to the system which can act independently regardless of human operators or human interaction. So in terms of artificial intelligence, we can say that something advanced compared to the robotics, and that is why we need to learn the robotics concept first. Then we will jump into the artificial intelligence segment, and you will properly understand the entire content. And our content from the X Robotics, we do have a vast content for you teachers, so that it will be easier for you to cope up with the examples, practicals and theoretical portion. So what is robotics? In terms of the general introductory remarks, I can only mention one thing to you, that is it is a combination of uh, robotics itself is a branch of technology or science, we can say, to which focuses on creating machines like the robots itself. Okay, so and you will probably ask what is robots and what are the robots we are talking about. So I can simply say one thing to you guys, that robot is something which is in combination of mechanisms, right? In combination of mechanism which can work independently to reduce the effort of human beings in such a place where human beings are unable to operate or find difficulties to operate, like in toxic environment or in hazardous environment. That is why we need to build something for ourselves to accommodate those things to work on behalf of us, right? And that particular thing will be termed as robot itself, and in which the branch of technology and engineering through which we are going to study the robots are commonly known as the robotics itself. So you have already seen several examples of different machineries in automation factories. Even though the vehicles you do use are one of the products coming from the automation factory, means automated factories, right? And there the robotics is very crucial, because human beings are uh, entitled to become get the fatigue, and they are unable to like operate for a longer period of time, and we can't able to proceed with the repetitive action in our life, right? So if I ask you to like grab a glass of water from your kitchen, that maybe it is possible to grab a single glass of water from the kitchen, but if I ask you to repeat that process for entire day and to continue the same journey for rest of the month or rest of the year, then it will become more hectic for you to like cope up for the same, right? So that is why we need to have robotics to accommodate to help us reduce our effort in different fields or different place, and also to help us accompany research work and other works in toxic environment or hazardous environment. That is why robotics is very much important for us. And you will find it funny that how the particular word came into existence and who coined it particularly. So robot itself, the word robot itself comes from the Czech word known as robota, and it is introduced by one of the playwriter, I can say, the Karel Capek in 1920 in one of the play where he depicted, where he mentioned that you can see the picture in here. Robots were depicted as artificial human beings, human-like beings that were created to serve humans. Means those robots in his play actually he demonstrated a way, a future in which robot will help us maintain the task and also to complete the task in given time through the command given by the human operators. Okay, so the robot itself is derived from the Czech word robota, that means forced labor. We are talking about the forced labor or work. So in the play itself, robots were created to work for humans and perform tasks that were difficult or dangerous. Okay, and also in terms of the STEM education, we will find several examples and the benefits for the same, which you as a teacher should know about beforehand, proceeding into the robotics and AI classes. So why we need to have the STEM education, understanding of STEM education before the classroom program. So it helps us to improve our decision making capability. It is also helping us to improve our problem solving ability. It refines your research skill, it polishes your creativity, it stimulates your curiosity. Because the time the student will go through one of the project development, then obviously we are going to engage them in a group or like team project work, right, rather than a single or individual project work. So they will go through the internet, they will go look up for different terms, they will find the problem, they will resolve it, they will come up with proper problem solving ability, what to do and what not to do on a specific cases. And further, there is always some scope of improvement, right? So suppose if you done one of the project today, and tomorrow onwards you will find yourself in a position where you will think of improving that project, like to upgrade the project, add new feature and add extra machinery parts in it. So it always stimulates the curiosity for both of the teachers and the student in our classroom program. So we do have several other opportunities as well in learning the STEM education or STEM concept apart from the robotics and AI. That is innovation opportunity, and obviously it is going to generate new ideas to solve the problem in our society. And the commercialization new innovation will be termed into, suppose your student point out one of the solution for the problems, and they demonstrated in front of the international robotics championship or any places of their choice, then obviously they are going to get receive some of the awards, prizes and so many other stuff. So yes, it will always nurture your creativity and build a great foundation to further go for the innovation oriented stuff rather than a simple stuff. We always try to go through the conventional life, we can say. So what about the law of robotics? So after the definition of robotics and robots, there are three law of robotics which are mentioned in our syllabus itself. So you have to let the student understand the concept of law of robotics, as well as we will look into the ethical point of view while teaching these laws of robotics, because as always everything does have some of the flaws in it, right? And by the term flaw itself, I'm referring to that contradiction point. Suppose if I'm stating a specific sentence to a human being that may be different in meanings in terms of different person in front of us, right? So what are the three law of robotics we are going to deal with? is these three laws, and why we are referring these three laws, and who actually gave these three laws of robotics. So as the theory suggests, from the robotics point of view, it also comes from one of the interesting background, because these laws are not written by any of the professional or engineers or the scientists, but the other person who always try to write down the science fiction novels. So sir Isaac Asimov is one of the person responsible for this law of robotics, and he wrote in his stories and novel about the law of robotics, the three law of robotics, and usually we call it as Asimov's three law. So what are the three laws of robotics? Let's see. So first law states that a robot may not injure a human being, or through inaction allows a human being to come to harm. Okay, so that means, it means actually we will not program the robot, or we will not build that type of robot, or we can say that a robot should follow this particular statement where it should not injure a human being through inaction, allow a human being to come to harm. Means until and unless if human being is coming nearby to the operating hand or something like that, or robotics body, and harming on its own knowledge, then we are not able to do anything about that, right? Until unless a human being do not come forward to harm themselves, it won't work like that. So robot must follow the first law, in which it should not injure a human being, or through inaction allow a human being come to harm. So what is second law states that is about, robot must obey the orders given to it by a human being, except where such order would conflict with the first law. So whenever we ask our robotics structure, that the robotics body or the mechanism itself, that you should follow this particular task, okay, so you go in there and complete this task for me, then what will happen? Robot will follow our orders, right? But it should not follow the orders given to it to harm other people's. Means the second law should not contradict with the first law in any of the cases. It should follow our orders, and the things it will obey our command, it will follow our orders, but not in terms of harming other human being, or not in terms of creating conflict with the first law. Okay, and what about the third law? A robot must protect its own existence. Let me give you a proper example to understand the third law. Suppose if we designed one of the robot and sent that robot to Mars or other planetary system, and by means of some accident or something happened to that robot, and one of the wheel is malfunctioning, not working properly. So on that case, a robot should be allowed to protect its own existence, because we are as a human being, we are unable to reach that particular place to like repair those robots. So on this scenario, we will allow our robot to protect its own existence, but under the case of that protection does not conflict with the first and second law. That should be the compulsory point. But there are other point as well to consider in this law of robotics, because the word harm itself does not mean anything in front of the robotics body. As a human being, we do have a proper understanding, because since we born, we are focusing on those things, what is good for us and what is bad for us. But behind every robot and every robotics product, there are group of peoples, or single person is involved building those things, right? So we must acknowledge those terms in a proper sense, so that it won't create conflict in between the definition. So in terms of harm, if we state harm to our children, or in front of our home, in our home itself, if we try to shout at our children that they are doing some of the bad stuff, or they are doing some of the mess in our home, then that harm won't be treated as the exact harm, like beating someone, or like harming some other person in that terms, in that context, right? So we should focus on the ethical part of the laws, and also as an instructor or the teacher, we should come forward and reduce the dependability on the limited words or the limited terms. Okay, so there are obviously some of the implication and limitation are there in the law itself. So the law of robotics introduced by the Isaac Asimov have significant implication and limitation when it comes to their practical application. So let's see some of the some of the aspect in more detail. So obviously the human safety is our topmost priority whenever we are building any of the robotics and AI stuff, right? So we always talk in terms of the data privacy and data security and so many other stuff. So those ethical framework need to be properly idealized before executing in your classroom program. So the primary implication of the laws is the focus on ensuring human safety by prioritizing the avoidance of human harms to the human. The law aims to protect individual from potential risk associated with robot behavior and action. Okay, so what are the ethical framework we should consider while building the robotics body or the robot itself? So this particular law provides an ethical framework for the development and use of intelligent robots. Okay, so the baseline of the responsibility behavior and encourage designer, engineer, and programmers to create machines that adhere to these principles rather than following the other context on their own, like developing their own set of language to communicate with others, and also like do the things on their own without any proper human guidance. So robot human interaction is one of the major ethical point we can say to consider. The law promotes the idea of harmonious interaction between the human and robot. They emphasizes the importance of robots following human commands, respecting human authority, and prioritizing human well-being. And obviously the fourth point states about the trust and acceptance. So adhering to the law can help build trust and acceptance of the robots in various domains. When robots are designed to prioritize human safety now, then people are more likely to feel comfortable and confident in their presence and interaction. So that is the major thing to consider. And yes, there is always some of the limitation as well in the context, as I was referring earlier. So interpretation and context. So the word itself, harm, does have different meaning to different peoples, right? So if we are trying to have a small little or like a fight with our siblings or any other person in our family members, that won't be considered as proper harm until and unless we try to harm in proper in bigger terms, in terms of their life threatening harm or something like that. But that won't create that much of context for the robotics body. So we should consider the word itself, harm, like the word harm itself, for a proper meaning. So it should be the self-preservation and can be subjective and challenging. So unforeseen consequences, what will be the unforeseen consequences for the same? The law do not account for all possible ethical dilemmas and situation that may arise in human robot interaction, because unexpected situation may come or may emerge, right? So we have to like come forward to like come up with the concept that we should accommodate some of the good points in our robotics body rather than just following the simple basic rule and following the procedure to build any of the robotics. As a teacher, we should teach them the ethical part of the robotics and AI. So conflicting priorities, yes, balancing conflicting priorities is a significant challenge. Situations can arise where protecting human safety may clash with robots' self-preservation, or where human order conflicts with avoiding harm. Resolving such conflicts require complex decision making and value judgment. So we should address those conflicting priorities, what should be done on a prior basis and what we can. So simply in programming itself, you may be heard of FIFO and the first in and first out concept and some other concept as well. So we will prioritize based on uh, the the priority level. Okay, so lack of universal adoption. The laws are not universally adopted or enforceable in the real world. While they provide a theoretical framework only, their practical application depends on the intention and programming decisions made by the robot designer and manufacturer. There is no guarantee that all robot will adhere to this principle. So as I was mentioning earlier as well, so as a teacher, you have to like guide your entire classroom with the proper terms, in terms of like explaining them the right thing to do in the programming and wrong thing, what they should not follow, because we can utilize the science in two perspective, either in good terms or in bad terms. So we should follow the good terms rather than the bad terms. Okay, the ethical gray areas. What are the ethical gray areas and how this law address this particular thing? The law do not address all the ethical consideration that arise in the field of robotics. They do not cover issues such as privacy, fairness, transparency, and long-term societal impact. These areas require broader ethical framework and ongoing discussion beyond the scope of original law. Obviously, there are some concerns related to the privacy, but if we talk in terms of machine learning in our Python programming, the time when we do the artificial intelligence practical, that time what we will face, we have to train our model based on the data sets, right? We have to introduce some of the data set. The data set may be in terms of images, videos, text, or other data like the Excel sheets and others. So those datas will be of different peoples who maybe gathered knowingly or unknowingly. We have to use those things to train our model. So the ethical consideration we should take care while building any of the robotics or artificial intelligence program for the same. Okay, so I hope this point is clear to you, the three law of robotics and the ethical consideration for the same, right? And the time when you go through the entire classroom program, you will find that there are separate section for the student. For the teacher's point of view, there are much more content to address, because as a teacher you should know more than the student, then only you are good to deliver the classroom program, right? So there will be difference, there will be two separate sections for individual terms, like the introduction to basic robotics for students. So if we have to introduce the basic robotics to our students, then we can mention a simple sentence to them. The word robot has been derived from the Czech word robota, which means drudgery. A robot can be defined as a machine operated by computer programs that can perform a small action. And we can simply mention they can be programmed to do various things. Okay, they can be programmed to do various things, and the field in which we study robots is known as robotics. And we can also point out some of the key points to consider. Suppose if we are referring to any of the robotics body, then it should run or powered by electricity and programmed to carry out the certain tasks like cleaning, etc., and sense the environment using sensor and react accordingly on its own, and help human beings to carry out repetitive tasks, and can work in hazardous environment, and can help us to explore places where a human cannot able to reach or find difficulties to work on. And even though after explaining these points, these key points to your student, there will be a picture, animations, and videos for your reference, so that you can show that to your students. Okay, and how we can actually achieve that? By giving the similarities between the humans and the robots. That is the thing we always do throughout the classroom program, right? Sorry, formulate coming. Okay, no problem, sir. The whole recording will be sent to you later on, and it will be uploaded to the YouTube, I believe, after this classroom. So there is nothing to worry. I will take care of entire content in a brief manner. Okay. So if we give the similarities, earlier only we discussed about the robotics, the concept of robotics, robots, STEM, AI, and further the definition of those and law of robotics. So you will get to know the time when the recording will be shared to you. Okay. So if we have to explain, suppose if we have to explain some of the key concept to our student, then as a teacher, we should always utilize the general examples which is present nearby us, like in our surrounding itself. So we will give the similarities of humans to explain the concept of robotics to our students. Like in here, what we do have humans and robots, right? And how those two things are correlated, or we can say that those two different things does have a comparison in between or similarities in between. So as a human, we do have the sensing ability, we do have perception ability. Perception actually tells us what is right for us and what is wrong for us, right? And further, what we do have is the cognition ability. The brain itself takes the decision and allow the hand and other things to produce the action, right? In our body, hands and legs to produce the action, even though we are using our vocal cord to produce the action in terms of sound wave. So similarly in robotics, we will find the same things for the thing. So it does have sensors in it. Robotics does have sensor in it to gather the information from the surrounding, through which the robotic structure can understand what is happening outside environment. And further, it does have the brain. We simply call it as a brain in front of our student, because students are more entitled to understand the simpler word rather than the complex one. But if you are talking in terms of the technical part of the brain, then we can simply say we are stating the microcontroller as the brain of robotic system. So brain will be responsible, the microcontroller in which we will feed the programming, the logic part, and further the microcontroller will be responsible, the brain will be responsible to take the action, and it will produce the action in terms of locomotion, actuation, and by other mean as well. In terms of locomotion, actuation, I'm referring to one of the body through which we can produce motion, nothing else. But we do have other mode of generating output as well, like the LEDs to produce the light, and buzzer and speakers to produce the sound, which we will discuss in details in this classroom today. So you should come up with the general example. So one more example is there to help you understand how the entire robotics body works, or the how robotic system works, is the driverless car. So in driverless car nowadays, it is too much popular in our day-to-day life, right? Many of you maybe heard of the Tesla and other car which can autonomously drive you from one place to another. Those things are common nowadays to hear about from the news, from the social media and other places. So we should take the examples from the things we do find in our environment, the common examples or the general examples for the student to easily understand the concept. Okay, so in driverless car, you will notice that some of the general components are there: the video camera, the radar sensor, the rotating sensor, and position estimator. So those things are the will come under the category of sensor, which is directly responsible to gather the information from the surrounding, and further it will send those inputs to the brain itself for further processing. And brain will have these two capability: the perception and cognition. The perception is all about the programming we are inserting, or like we are programming we are doing for the robotics brain. So in programming we will obviously follow the logics, right? If this condition we will receive from the input, then what to do next. So based on the logic, it will send those things to the cognition ability, and cognition, the brain itself, will decide what to do and what not to do, and it will be delivered through the output device, through the action method in here. And action can be generated using various kind of motion producing elements such as motors and others. I already mentioned that three of the things in this session, like the motors, LED to generate the output in terms of light, and further we do have speakers and buzzers for the same, so to generate the output in terms of sound waves, right? So these are the key point to consider while delivering the classes in your school itself. So let's see some of the basic component to build the robotic system and discuss these in detail, so that you will get a proper grip on this chapter itself or the subject itself. So as I mentioned, each and every robotics body does require three of the things, right? And why we are talking about the robotics only, not about the AI? Because later on we will cover the artificial intelligence in our classroom program. And if we talk in terms of robotics, then we are referring to one of the machine or set of combination of mechanism which can reduce our effort in different place, like the hazardous environment or toxic environment. Suppose if I ask you to explore the volcano, to carry some of the research work without the protective suits on or something like that, then it is not possible for a normal human being to follow the same, right? So we need to send some of the machinery over there to help us accommodate, help us conduct the research work and carry out tasks for us. So that is why we need robotics in life. And for the artificial intelligence, it is all about the upgraded form of robotics which can take their own decision regardless of human operator or human person in front of the robotics body to give the instruction or so on. So artificial intelligence, we will learn artificial intelligence later on. Let's focus on the robotics, as this particular thing is the basic one to consider first, then jump into the AI. So in robotics, or to develop any of the robotics, at least we need three of the basic components. First is will be the input device, which will be commonly termed as the sensors. And second one will be the processing unit, which in robotics we can call it as the brain of robotics, or simply we can call it as microcontrollers, in which we will feed the programming and further it will decide the action based on the logic placed inside the programming. And else the third point what we do have is the output, and through the output we can generate various kind of motions and also generate the output in terms of light or sound waves. There are plentiful of options we can proceed with as per our requirement. That's all. So apart from these three things, what else we do need is the fourth stuff, that is the body for our robotics robot itself, right? And those body will be termed as chassis. Like we do have one bone structure in our body, the skeleton itself, to help us get the rigidity and the shape itself, right? That defines it. So in terms of robotics, we call that shape as chassis itself. So whenever you find any of the bodies, you can call those bodies as chassis, even though the term chassis itself will be applicable to drone, robotics, anything of your choice. Like many of the major cars and other things does have the bodies for the same to accommodate all the electronics. And why we need the body? Because if we try to connect the wires, sensors and output device, everything will be a soft sack rather than a complex fixed structure or the rigid structure. So we need to accommodate this chassis in between to help us address individual things like the input device, processing unit, and output device, to accommodate those things in it so that it will get a rigid structure. So let's discuss the first point in details. So the first point was, to build a robotics, what we need is the are the sensors, right? Different type of sensor which will help us gather the information from the surrounding, right? So we do have different type of sensors, and many of the sensors, I believe you already have the idea about the sensors from your mobile devices or other thing present nearby you in your home, in your office, in your other workplaces, right? So sensors are responsible to collect the data from the environment. And further, we do have different type of sensor. Temperature sensor will help us to gather the data like temperature itself from the environment. Accelerometer will further help us to find the acceleration value of some of the object. The infrared sensor will help us communicate with other devices, and also it is widely being used in many of the television sets and other to operate and change the channels using our remote control, right? And you will find some of the cool examples in your phone. So from the teacher side, I would like to know one thing from you guys, like how many of the sensors are exactly there in your mobile phone? Do you have any idea about how many sensors are there in your mobile phone? Any one of you? You can unmute yourself, you can interact with me, there is no issue on that.
3.
Yeah, three. And can you please name some of them?
Keyboard, mic, and touch.
Yes, perfect. So one more sensor what we do have is the ultrasonic sensor. And you will wonder where the ultrasonic sensor is placed in your phone. So many of the phones nowadays does have the fingerprint sensor. We commonly know it as a fingerprint sensor, right? And that particular sensor is nothing but the ultrasonic sensor which works with the ultrasonic frequency. And overall, the screen itself does have the touch feature, right? Using the mobile screen, we can interact with the application, we can interact with anything in our mobile phone, right? So we do have touch screen to take the touch feedback. We do have different type of color sensor to read different type of colors from the environment. And even though Amazon warehouse does have these color sensors mounted on the automation factory, where they can directly color code the box and send to the required person or required place to be processed further. And a smoke sensor will further help us to gather the information related to the carbon monoxide and carbon constituent, like the carbon monoxide and carbon dioxide contained in our environment. Let's see some of the
Is
common.
camera also a sensor?
Yeah, camera is also one of the sensor, but along with the camera we do have other thing to consider. So the camera is a combination of CMOS sensor and focus mechanism. Okay, so focus mechanism and CMOS sensor combinedly known as the camera itself. So we can say that as we do have lens in our eyes to adjust the sight capabilities. If we want to look nearby object, then the lens in our eyes always adjusts itself to like change the mode of operation, right? Similarly, we do have focus thing along with the camera in the robotics body to adjust the same. So combinedly the focus thing and the CMOS image sensor or the sight capability will form the camera, and it is one of the sensor. Yes, we can say that it is one of the sensor, but not the camera is not the sensor, but inside what we do have is this CMOS image sensor, that is for image recognition or dots of like the pixels recognition, we can say that in total. Okay, so apart from this image recognition and the CMOS image sensor, what we do have in our body, the body balance stuff. Okay, so in our body we do have one of the organ dedicated to maintain the body balance, and if we are trying to fall down in one of the either side, body will inform that you are inclining in this particular angle or something like that, and further brain will process to balance the whole thing using our feet and hand motion, right? So in body we do have different type of, in robotics we do have different type of sensors which can help us maintain the balance throughout. So what are those sensors? Commonly known as the gyro sensor, which will give us the actual information about x, y, and z axis, and based on the input coming from the gyroscope and other, we can find out the exact orientation of our object in space, and further we can use the same. Maybe you already heard of the SpaceX, the company is SpaceX. So may you please tell me why the SpaceX is so much popular nowadays? Anyone do have idea why SpaceX is so much popular? Any one of you from the teacher side, if you are like finding difficulties answering directly, then you can also drop the answer if you do know in the chat section. There is no issue on that. So SpaceX is popular or famous, we can say, because of one and only thing, because of the rocketry system. And why that particular rocketry system is popular? Because they are actually into the reusable type of rocketry system. Means whenever they try to launch the rocket, it will always come down and it will land back to the surface. That is the main thing to consider in this company. So SpaceX, okay, so they are making the reusable rocketry system. So why we need to have the reusable rocketry system? It will reduce the further uses of material. Yes, it will reduce the cost pricing for individual rocketry system to be sent on space, and further it will help company to improve their balance sheet, and also we can say that we are creating less garbage compared to the previous model of rocketry system we do have existing, right? So the gyroscope is one of the key sensor they are using in their rocketry system to find out the axial information, like the coordinates of different terms, x and y, x, y, and z axis. So based on the inputs coming from the gyroscope, they are actually stabilizing the rocket by throwing the propulsion system, or using the propulsion system to orient the propulsion system to desired direction to maintain the stability, and also to maintain a proper landing sequence. So that thing we will use in our classroom program as well. The time when we'll reach that situation, we will try to use one of the sensor to find out the axial information. And in our body, we do have ears to take the audio signals coming from the environment itself, right? So similarly, in robotics, what we do have is the microphone. In mobile phone as well, you do have microphone to further convey your message to the other person on phone. But in robotics, we can use microphone to gather the information like the commands itself, and to stop the operation and start the operation, to command itself. Basically, the command, to give the command, we do have that things in our robotics. And what else we do have? We do have our heart to maintain the fluidity of blood in our entire body, through which we are actually helping our body to receive oxygen and other nutrients for the same, right, to further grow. So we do have biochip or micropumps in robotic system, through which we are actually regulating those fluids from one place to another. Because sometimes, see, right now we are totally dependent on the electrical stuff itself. Whenever you, maybe you already seen some of the project in YouTube and other places, you will find that everything is related to electricity itself, right? Electrical or electronics. But sometimes when there is more pressure need to be generated to lift some of the force and other things to carry out other works, we need to look into other aspect as well. So there are two aspects to consider. One is the pneumatic aspect, and other one is the hydraulic aspect. So we can also operate the arms of robots and other aspect of robotics using these two methods apart from the electrical energy. So using the pneumatic energy, we are talking about the air pressure. So if we try to operate turbine, even though the turbine in power plants getting operated by the air pressure or vapor pressure, we can say in details, right? So air pressure, we can utilize air pressure for that application. And further, hydraulic will be used the time when we are referring to flow of fluids like oil itself, different type of crane. And in automation industry, different type of cranes we do have. The robotics arm also utilizes the hydraulic mechanism for the same. And also many of the jcb you may seen earlier does have the hydraulic feature to lift that much of load and to maintain that much of load, because it is not possible for us to efficiently come up with electrical solution to build the robotics body for the same, right? So whenever we're trying to build project, we always consider two aspects. First one, the efficiency of the project, and second one, the cost effectiveness of the project. The reason why I'm stating this one, because as a trainer or the teacher, you have to understand the key concept. Suppose if I ask you to build a car and you do have one rocket engine in your backyard, then it is not viable for us to utilize the rocketry engine for the car building of the car, right? We should come up with a small engine which is efficient and cost effective for the car operation, because car does not utilizes that much of energy and it does not require that much of energy to operate, right? So effectiveness and cost will be considered while developing any of the projects related to robotics, AI, and any others. So in our here, it is mentioned that brain is generating some of the signals, right? So we do have brain waves through the MRI and other things actually take place. But in terms of robotics, what we are referring in here is the proper way of communication. So we do have different type of communication method in robotics as well. So we will use the RF communication. We will use the Bluetooth modules as well. So we will use the infrared modules to further convey the communication. We will use the Wi-Fi stuff to get it connected to the Wi-Fi or use the internet. And further, that thing will be termed as the IoT devices, which can be connected to the internet and further can be operated and be used using the internet through the application and other. And fifth thing, we can go for the manual operation using the buttons and other stuff, right? Using the switches, joystick, and other stuff. So these are the way of communication, method of communication in our robotics body. And as we do have our nose and the tongue is specifically to find out the taste of something. Tongue is responsible to give us the insight for the taste, and nose is responsible to give us the fragrance or the smell sense, right? In robotics, we do have different type of sensors to communication means instruction. Communication means instruction. No, 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 no. Communication is different from the instruction. Instructions is something, by the term instruction itself, I'm referring to the programming part. So the program we will insert into our robotics brain. Okay, instruction will be our set of commands, but the communication is completely different. So communication will be termed as, suppose if you develop something and you have to convey the message to your robotics body, then you can utilize the sensors to do the same. Like the touch sensor, we can implement to like turn on and off some of the things inside the robotics body, right? Or we can execute some of the tasks to insert the values. Suppose if you are talking about the CNC machine or other machines, then we can use the touch symbol to exactly feed the data into it, right? So the communication will be termed as in terms of feedback loop, we need to establish some of the communication. Suppose if we want to operate the robotics body, so the mode of operation will define the communication method actually. So how we can understand this thing in details? Suppose if we are developing any of the robot and that robot need to be controlled by the human operator, or some of the data is required to be fed to the robotic system to execute, right? So we can build some of the application to send the data, through various mode of communication to robotics body. And the mode of communication I explained earlier: the radio frequency, the IR infrared method, the Bluetooth, use of Bluetooth modules, the use of Wi-Fi modules for the same, to establish a communication between the human operator and robotics body. Even though we can use this communication method inside the robotics body to help the robotic system to communicate with one another. If suppose we send two of the rocketry system into the space, and one of the rocketry system like just collided with the asteroid or something like that, or something happened to the first robotic system, but before the decommissioning of that rocket, that rocketry system or robotic system will further communicate to the other robots that I found one of the difficulties in this area, so please be careful, do not execute in this line, do not follow this line of motion, otherwise you will also collide with the same. So further, it can be used to further communicate in between the robotics devices, and also to establish a communication between us and the robotic system. So many of the satellites are already in the orbit, right? And we are communicating the same to receive the communication, and also if we need to change the operation, we can use these type of communication method to give the instructions, to be followed directly without the programming part, because the programming does have those set of instruction already embedded into it, right? But apart from this programming instruction, if we want to give some other instruction, then we will follow the communication methods in robotics. Okay, so I hope my answer is clear to you, sir, right? Okay, so let's focus on other things. So we do have the smell things, which I was explaining earlier. So to find out different gaseous, smell is nothing, or fragrance is nothing but composition of gases in our atmosphere, right? So how we can find out in robotics body? So we do have different type of sensors exactly to address this issue. We do have gas sensors, smoke sensors, which can identify different element in the air itself and further inform the robotics body. And how we can implement these things in our robotic system? Suppose if we take one example of restaurant or any other places which utilizes the LPG gas, or liquid petroleum gases, liquefied petroleum gas, in which we do have one of the chemical key element, or the chemical itself, which gives its fragrance, because LPG, as you know, it does not have any odor, so it is completely odorless. And if in case if it is leaking from the cylinder itself, then you won't able to find out, because it does not have any fragrance in it or any smell in it. So in LPG, we always mix one of the chemical, that is one of the gas, ethyl mercaptan. Okay, so why we mix ethyl mercaptan? To receive that faint smell which comes from the LPG, that foily smell which always you find while turning on the LPG stove. You will find one of the smell coming out of the burner, right? So that smell is actually comes from the ethyl mercaptan addition into the system. So if we implement one of the gas sensor to identify the ethyl mercaptan presence, so suppose if the value is within 1%, then it is okay, there is no issue on that. But if it exceed beyond 1%, then what will happen? Fire hazard will happen. And some of the major accident can happen in restaurant, in different places, in our home itself. So we can build one of the robotic system in which we will tell that if you find the concentration of ethyl mercaptan in air itself more than 1%, then trigger the alarm, or send me the communication, send me the message that gas is leaking inside my restaurant or in my home. So that time the robotics body will use the communication method, like the IR sensor, Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, and other method, to notify directly in your mobile application. And further, you will get to know that in my home gas is leaking. I have to take care. I will go rush back to the home and turn off the knob, right? So for the safety purposes, we can utilize those things as well. And many of the signboards nowadays nearby to the traffic and other places, you will find one of the boards which is entitled to display the concentration of different gases, the harmful gases in the air itself, the sulfur and sulfur constituent, the SO2, SO3, and the nitrogen content constituents like the NO2 and NO gases, right? So to detect those, we need to have these sensors, and further we will integrate those sensors to build a meaningful robotics body. So focus, as I mentioned earlier, focus will be addressed as the lanes and the combination of lanes and motors, which will be activated or actuated based on the perception we want to go through. Suppose if the object is far enough to see, then we have to adjust and zoom into those object to see the entire things, right? But if the object is nearby to the robotics body, then there will be no requirement for the adjustment. So simply the CMOS sensor will work directly, but lens, combination of lens is important to get the entire area rather than a small area for the CMOS sensor. And we do have taste bud in our tongue to give us the sense of taste, right? So in robotics we do have different type of sensor to find out again the chemical constituent of the things. Even though the humidity sensor is one of the sensor which is responsible to get the exact moisture present in the atmosphere itself. So apart from this, what we do have is the speech. We do have our mouth and the vocal cord to produce the speech and the sound itself. But in robotics body, we do have micro speakers, buzzers, and other devices to produce the sound in terms of output. Okay, so we do have pressure. Our whole screen is works as a pressure sensor, right? If anyone try to touch you or like press in it, so you will get to know that someone is pressing in your hand or someone is like squeezing the hand, right? So we do have different type of pressure sensor in robotic system which help us to maintain the to get the information about the environment pressure or atmospheric pressure. Suppose if we are going to build one of the satellites, smaller satellites to be placed in the orbit itself, then we will obviously use these type of sensors for the same, right? Then only we will get the pressure difference, and based on the pressure difference we will execute the task, right? Otherwise, if we try to build a submarine or something like that and we do not consider the pressure points and the pressure difference and do not use these sensors, then our what will happen, the same thing happened to one of the submersible, some not the submarine but submersible thing later on, the guys who went to explore the Titanic, I believe, the ship itself that collapsed due to the higher pressure difference and the consideration. So further, this sensor will alert you that you are exceeding the pressure limit for the integrity of the structure, and you should leave this region. Otherwise, your ship or your a whole structure going to collapse or something will happen. So that thing will be crucial while building any of the robots. So there is always some of the feedback loop, right? So without the feedback loop, there is nothing present in the atmosphere. So we must get the feedback from the sensors to address specific problems in robotics. And our skin will be treated as the touch sensor, one of the touch sensor, and the touch sense of touch we can get from the skin itself. So in mobile phone application and other devices, we do have different type of touch sensor to produce the inputs for the robotics body. So basically the touch sensor comes in a two different what we can say, two different technology or two different development we can say. So first touch sensor is all about the registry type of touch sensor, in which there is a sandwich of two layers. So whenever we try to press this first layer, then it will touch the second layer, and further it will inform the brain or the microcontroller that some of the key were pressed in our touch screen. And other one which we use in common day-to-day life is the capacitive type of touch screen, which works with the capacitance. And you don't have to worry about these terms, because in my classroom program I will explain each and every concept in details in throughout journey. Okay, so capacitance, we can only operate the mobile phone using our skin only, not using the gloves and other things, right? So using the skin, we can actually able to generate some of the capacitance, and further that sensor can be used to take the inputs from the environment itself. Okay, so I hope these points are clear to you. So let me show you a real life example or the application of sensor. Does fire alarm also works on the gas sensor or temperature sensor? Yes, fire alarm does have the gas sensors and temperature sensor in it. Both of the sensor are there in the fire alarm. So one of the gas sensor is there, or we can say that in terms of gas sensor, we can directly say that is smoke sensor rather than gas sensor, because gas sensor does have many of the varieties we do have for the gas sensor. The gas sensor can be addressed using different type of gas combinations, uh, like uh, like sulfur and other things, right? But a smoke sensor is specifically address the gas related to CO2, which only can be produced by burning something, right? So these two gases are the common one which can be produced after the fire, right? So a smoke sensor, we do have the smoke sensor in the fire alarm system. And also apart from the smoke sensor, what we do have in the fire alarm system is the flame sensor, or temperature sensor. We can call it as flame sensor or temperature sensor to take the readings for the temperature, increase in temperature, and also to flame sensor is responsible to get the reading for the infrared radiation, because whenever there is fire, always the infrared radiation will be more, because infrared radiation is one of the key point which increases the temperature, right? And even though we are receiving the infrared radiation from the sun, which are actually helping us to make the environment, helping the environment make to reach the warmer temperature, right? So flame sensor or IR sensor, it may be the combination of both or all of them. Okay. Okay, fine. So now let's jump and see some real-time application for the sensor. So if we take one of the example for the plane itself, then you will find the sensor is responsible to gather the information such as position, height, speed, temperature, and location. I'm not mentioning all of them, but some of them for you to understand the concept. Okay. And further, onboard computer is there to process the data which is coming from the sensor, and it will further based on the logic placed on the computer itself, it will produce the output, and output will be in terms of engine speed, flaps, motors, and wings operation. That's all. Okay, these are the basic example to understand the concept of sensor. So in terms of like explaining this concept in front of your student, what we can say, sensor is to detect the quantifiable physical, chemical, or biological property, and it is used to convert the readable signals such as an electrical signal. Okay, so sensor will collect the data and further send the electrical signal to the brain, and brain, based on the logic placed inside of it through programming, it will process it and produce the output for the same. So let's discuss some of the sensors in details. Okay, then only we will jump into the next part where I will explain and show you what is going to be covered in the classroom program and how, the method of execution for the same. Okay. So there are some of the sensors in your screen. I believe it is visible, properly visible to you. So you can see some of the common sensors which we are going to use in our classroom program. So what are those sensors? The color sensor, gas sensor. So let me explain it to you one by one. So the color sensor will be used to take the readings of different colors from the environment. Okay, so it will help us identify different colors in the environment, and further brain will process the data based on our logic placed inside the programming. The alcohol sensor is one of the major sensor the police nowadays are using to detect the alcohol consumption among the drivers, right? They do have one of the device, that breath analyzer, right? So using that device, what you need to do, that using that device, you have to blow the air coming from your mouth to that device, and further it will on the display itself we will see that whether a person consumed alcohol or not. And even though if it is consumed by the person, then what is the concentration of the alcohol he consumed. So using this sensor, we can build one of the robotic system where we can identify the alcohol presence. And if suppose if we try to build a smart helmet, and many of the peoples were already developed these kind of project, and in the helmet itself we place alcohol sensor, and further using the signals coming from the alcohol sensor, if the person had the consumption consumed the alcohol before driving the car or any vehicle, the bike itself, while wearing the helmet, then the bike won't start. We can make some of the safety system using these sensors for the drivers, right? And further gas sensor will help us to get the information of different gases present in the atmosphere, and based on the concentration we can execute the task. The LDR sensor is one of the like well-known sensor in the market, through which we are actually operating many of the street light in our country. So you have maybe noticed that thing, like whenever there is nighttime, the street light automatically turns itself on, and when there is a daytime, the street light automatically turn itself off. So using this LDR module or the LDR sensor, we can actually implement those things. The thermistor is one of the example through which one of the sensor through which we can take the reading of temperature. And apart from the thermistor, we do have a specially dedicated temperature sensor, that is LM35. Okay, so these sensor will be used to take the reading from the environment for the temperature sense. And we do have ultrasonic sensor, and these two, ultrasonic sensor and the IR sensor, is combination of sensors through which we can detect obstacle present in front of our environment or the robotics body. Okay, so ultrasonic sensor is based totally on the ultrasonic frequency, like the bats can identify the obstacle in front of them without having the eyes in it, right? So similarly, ultrasonic sensor will follow the same protocol. One will transmit the ultrasonic frequency, other will receive it, and further we will get to know that some obstacle are there in front of the robotics body, and further using the logic we won't operate the robotics structure towards the obstacle, right? We always want to secure the robotics body. So using this sensor, we can actually detect the obstacle. So PIR sensor is commonly used in different type of security system, and it is one of the known sensor to detect the motions around us. So many of the security cameras and in our home security arrangement, there are PR sensor which can detect the movement happening in front of it. And rain sensor is used to like detect the presence of rain, so that you can design one of the project, you can say, which will automatically roll out the curtain or roll out the take like pull out the clothes which are hanging on the ropes and other things in your balcony area. So using this sensor, we can automate certain system in our home as well to make our life comfortable on that. So touch sensor, as you all know, touch sensor, we do have these type of touch sensor for the robotics, which we can accommodate to give the uh, uh, physical inputs to the robotic system. Humidity sensor is one of the sensors through which we are going to get the information of moisture present in the environment. And phototransistor will further help us to get the intensity of light coming from the environment itself. Okay, the water flow sensor will help us to take the reading of the water flowing into the pipe or into the system, and further it will help us what is the true pressure of the water coming from the municipal corporation or other places, so that we can evaluate the things accordingly. The gyroscope, as I already explained, this particular sensor will help us get the information regarding three of the axes, that is our X, Y, and Z axis. And based on the readings coming from the sensor side, we can execute the task accordingly. And soil moisture sensor is one of the interesting sensor, you can say. Nowadays students are using on a regular basis these sensors, because we are always leaving our home for some of the holidays and some of the pre-planned events in our life, right? And on that scenario, you are unable to feed the water to your plantation happened done in your home site or in your balcony area. So how you will provide the water supply to the plants even though if you are not present in your home? So using the sensor, soil moisture sensor, you can get the exact moisture content in the soil itself, and based on the reading, suppose if the reading drops 60% of moisture content, then automatically we will trigger using the microcontroller, we will trigger the pump to feed the water to our plant, directly to our plant system. So we can build several of the things out of these sensor. Yeah, Sir Chandan sir said, I have a machine at home that turn off and on water machine fulfillment of tank. Yes, sir. That water management system, the same concept we can also utilize to automate the process. Like you do have that one thing installed in your home to manually to automatically operate the water pump inside your home. Whenever there is a less 10% of water in your tank, then automatically the pump will turn on, and further the time when the water level reaches 100%, the pump will turn off. So using these kind of, not the soil moisture sensor, that is that particular sensor is known as the water label sensor. So using those water label sensor, we can actually get the reading from the syntax or the container or the tank itself. Then based on the readings, we will execute the task independently without any human operator presence in front of the system. Okay. So I hope the concept of the basic sensors is clear to you, right? Okay, so there are obviously not limited. We are not limited to that much of sensor. We do have different type of sensors as well, apart from the sensors I showed you. So what more query? If you will take, yes, sir, please. These sessions are totally interactive ones. So if you ask 1,000 questions, then I'm ready to answer those to you.
Sir,
Okay.
yesterday I was watching Shark Tank India, and in that, one company was showing that diamond, and the she was testing the diamond whether the diamond is original or not. So,
Hmm.
does that machine also contains that a sensor that checks whether the diamond is original or not?
Okay, there is two concept while testing the hardness, testing the diamonds especially. So we do have. Let me recall some of the memories from my engineering background. So one is known as the Rockwell test, and one is known as the Brinell test. Two of the tests are there to test the hardness for the same, because diamond cannot be judged using our naked eyes or using any of the combination of sensors, because sensor, what will be the responsibility of the sensor? It will take the readings of the reflection or other aspect like the optical part of it, right? But we cannot able to tell exactly which one is the original one and which one is the duplicate one based on the sensor reading. So what we will use two of the methods, that is Rockwell hardness testing and Brinell hardness testing. That is the common method of testing the hardness of any object. So yes, that object or that particular project may do have one of the things to test the hardness of the system. So maybe some of the input, some of the sensor, yeah, are involved, but not exactly in terms of optical. So they are taking the reading for the hardness, and based on the reading, they are saying that it is of original quality, or it is original, or it is of duplicate quality. So based on the hardness itself. Okay. So I will surely, sir, I will love to see that video and further give you the technical information for the same. If you help me with that link of that video for this archive, then I will definitely break down individual part for the same. I will give you what are the inputs are there, what are the processing unit they place. And even though for the output generation, they do have, I believe they do have one of the screen to display the data on it, right? So I will definitely come to that one. Okay, so apart from this conventional sensor, we do have different type of sensors present with us. So what are those sensors? The label sensors, infrared sensor, smoke sensors, water quality, optical, image, proximity, motion, chemical, temperature, pressure, and acceleration sensors. So these are the common sensors which we are going to use in our classroom program. I'm not saying that we should not use these things, but these are the commonest one you can utilize in your classroom program for the topic you need to cover throughout the syllabus for class 9 and 10, and specifically for class 9 and 10. But if you want to go beyond and start with the junior classes, that is also perfect to start with the same. Okay, so there is obviously one classification of sensors, right? You have to understand this concept in brief manner, otherwise you will find yourself in a position where you will face difficulties using a specific type of sensor, because you have to know which sensor will be suitable for your project and which sensor you should avoid using in your project work, right? So there are two classification of sensor. One is the passive type of sensor, and other one is the active type of sensor. So the passive sensor will be termed as those sensor in which we are taking the reading directly from the environment, like the sunlight, earthquake, and other readings like the wind, the speed of wind. Okay, the speed of wind, sunlight, and other aspect, which is readily available in the environment, and we just have to take the readings from the environment. So those sensor will be termed as the passive sensor. So apart from the passive sensor, we do have other type of sensor. Those will be termed as the active sensor. And active sensor is one of the sensor which generates its own signal first, A sensor is responsible to generate its own signal, and then further upon reflection, if it is reflecting back and based on the reflected signal, it is informing the brain to operate for the same. Okay, so the active type of sensor is always one of the type of sensor which generates its own signal first and then receives it upon reflection and further help us identify the obstacle and other things into the system. Okay, those will be termed as two type of sensor: active sensor and passive sensor. So you should know, you have to know about the in-depth detail of active type of sensor and the passive type of sensor. Sonar in submarine is active type of sensor. Yes, correct. This ultrasonic sensor is one of the active type of sensor, and sonar is one of the, what we can say, the upgraded version of ultrasonic sensor which we are using in submarine. Yes, correct. So we do have two different categories because we are going to operate the robotics body. Then we have to consider two different aspects. First will be our digital system to consider, and second one will be our analog system to consider. So what is the key difference between digital system and the analog system, and why we need those? Do you have any idea, sir? And any one of the teacher, any idea about the digital system and analog system and why we need those in our day-to-day life?
So digital systems are basically flip-flop based, no? That's one on, one off, zero off. And
Yes.
analogs are in the waveforms.
Yes, perfect, sir. Correct, sir. So whenever we talk in terms of the digital system, we are referring to the two value system or the binary system, right? We are talking about two of the values, that is 0 and 1. Either the value will be 0 or 1. And that thing will be covered inside the digital system. And why we need those system in robotics itself? Because sometimes we only have to turn off the device and turn on the device. That all. So whenever we need to use this feature, turning on the device and turning off the device, we will use the digital system. But in case of temperature, it is not a fixed value, right? It does have a fluctuating values. In between, we can say the general reading will be in between 0 to 100 degrees centigrade in general, but we can go beyond the negative temperature, we can go beyond the 100 degrees centigrade, right? So it does have a range to be addressed. So taking the reading from the for the temperature itself does require a range. So in analog system, what we refer to a range between 0 and 1, including 0 and 1 as well. So we will always refer to two of the system. One will be our digital system and other one will be our analog system. So if we want to generate or take the reading from the sensor in terms of 0 and 1 or on and off, then we will use digital system for the same. In terms of taking the reading in terms of different variables or changing values in between 0 and 1, we will refer to the analog system. Okay, so in under the analog system, we will find several sensors like the temperature sensor, moisture sensor, or gas sensor, because gas sensor also gives us the reading about the concentration, exact concentration of gas present in the air itself, right? So those sensor will be termed inside the analog stuff, and the digital will be termed as the LED will be termed in the digital system, or different type of sensor. Let me take some of the examples. So if we take the IR sensor, if some obstacle is present in nearby to the IR sensor, then it will give us the signal of 1. If there is nothing present in front of the IR sensor, then it will give us the value of 0. So this thing can be considered into the digital system. Okay, and why we need to have a proper understanding of digital analog? Because in robotics, while doing the programming, we have to use the two different functions. One is the digital and other one is analog function. Okay, and let me give you a simple example which you can also use in your classroom program in front of the student to explain the digital system and analog system. But I believe they already have this knowledge, because in computer application also this particular topic is being covered, right? So if we have to give them the example of digital system, then we can simply say that you already seen the switches in your home, right? You already operated those switches in your home to turn on and off the appliances. So those switches will be termed as digital system. And for the analog, apart from this switch, what we do have one more thing extra in common in our switchboards is the regulators, right? Maybe you already seen the regulators and use the regulators to increase and decrease the speed of fan, right? So regulator is responsible to produce the value from 0 to 1 rather than 0 and 1. So it will start from the off condition and further it will increase the value to full or high speed mode, right? So using this simple example, you can help the student to understand the concept of digital and analog system. That is crucial. And throughout the classroom program, I will first try to explain the concept in both of the technical terms and the professional manner. And then second, I will refer to some of the concept which you can use in your classroom program in front of the student, because compared to the teachers, a student won't understand that much of the technical data, right? So we have to accommodate the same methodology for the student to understand. Okay, apart from this, what we do have different type of sensor, as I mentioned. So you can take the reference. I believe from today onwards, the company is going to roll out the LMS access for the same, right? So I will get in touch with them and further help individual ones. If you signed up for the same, for the Google Forms, have you signed up? Then you will receive the email from our company site for the LMS access, through which you can go through entire content once, and then further I will help you further to understand the concept in broader sense. Okay. So we will only, okay, let's limit ourselves to the first class, because it will become hectic for you to like cope up with each and every example, because already it is 1.5 hours into this classroom. So I will explain some other concept today, and further we will jump on to our next session to understand the other aspect of electricity and electronic components. Okay, let me tell you one thing, why we need to understand the basic electronic components before teaching this subject in our classroom program. Because we do have limited resource in the market, right? Suppose if you find yourself dependable on the microcontroller itself, and the microcontroller does have small things mounted on it, and on a usual basis we cannot able to go to the market and buy these things if someone breaks it or like some malfunction happens, right? So you have to learn. And also one more example to consider, suppose if you designed a robotic system in which only 7-volt power source is required, but there is no such adapter you will find in the market that actually gives you the 7 volt in total, right? So you have to build your own power system for the same. So to tackle those situations, you need to understand the basic electronic components and how those basic electronic things works in general. Okay, so after completion of these, we will jump into the Tinkercad section, where you will learn the 3D design aspect and all other electronic simulation. And also we will explore some of the cool project based on the analog circuitry rather than the programmable ones. So we will explore the analog circuitry problems, and also we will jump into the Arduino board and we will see how those things works. But in this classroom program, you will not be limited with the Arduino microcontroller, because I'm going to explain 3 to 4 microcontrollers in total, like the Node MCU, ESP modules, and other stuff, so that it will be easier for you to at least use the required thing in the required place. Because if I give you the example of Arduino programming and how to achieve these certain things using the Arduino programming, then you will be limited with the Arduino itself. You will not get the opportunity to explore other things. So I will help you with the concept of other microcontroller as well. So you will learn the basic programming using the Scratch method. So in the Tinkercad platform itself, we do have 3 mode of operation. So I will explain individual ones. The 3D design will be discussed and the explained in our classroom program. The circuitry will be explained to you in details. And further, we will jump into the code blocks, where we will we will use the Scratch mean of programming to like convey the meaningful message to the microcontroller. Okay. And after the completion of code blanks, we will jump into the Arduino IDE and further understand the basic concept of embedded C++ programming. So, and you will probably ask me why we need to understand the C++ programming if only Python programming is there in your syllabus itself, right? So using the Python programming, we can take the data from the sensor and other devices and process it in our computer. But before that, we need to upload the dump file to the microcontrollers to provide us the data for the further calculation, for the image recognition, for the visual recognition and the algorithm itself. So you need to understand the embedded C++ first, then only the Python programming will help you further for the classroom program. And we will also see some of the cool method to develop the mobile application. So one of the mobile application is there in front of you, in which I use the simplistic approach of MIT App Inventor, and I use the block arrangement to actually execute the task in my mobile. So if I show you the practical, how what you are going to learn in your classroom program in this platform, so you will learn how to build the practical setup, or how to build the application to control the device autonomously using the IoT platform. So if I plug one of the microcontroller, I do have Node MCU with me. So if I plug this, and one LED is actually connected with my Node MCU. Okay, let me switch back to the other cameras. Okay, let me switch back to the other camera so that it will be clearly visible to you. Okay, maybe this screen is visible to you. Okay, fine. So let it be then. So screen is visible and you can see the Node MCU is on my hand, right? And one of the mobile application which I built is in the screen itself, and LED is connected to the same. So suppose if I'm operating this Node MCU directly with our programming part, then we can accommodate any of the mobile application to control the devices and the appliances nearby us. And those devices will be turned as an IoT. And IoT concept will be also shared with you guys, with you teachers in here, so that there will be nothing to worry about. So if I open up the same application, which you can see in your screen itself, so if I click on one of the link, okay, let me connect the Wi-Fi, which I programmed it earlier for. Okay, so now my mobile is connected to this Node MCU. So if I try to press one of the button, that is on button, the LED on, and you can see it is actually executing, right? The off on button on the screen itself, you will find the IoT app. So if I click again, nothing will happen. But if I click on the off option in here, then LED will turn off, and you can see the green panel is just shifted from one place to another. If I click again this one, then you will notice the glow of LED, right? And off, on and off. So how to develop these applications, how to interact with your robotic system, that is why we are providing this training for you to understand the overall concept rather than being dependent on the syllabus part itself. So apart from the syllabus, you will learn how to integrate different electronics and how to build projects from scratch. No help will be required after this classroom program. But even though we are providing the support for 1 year, so in case if you find difficulties to like build any of the project in your classroom program, if you do have any of the queries and doubts, you can ping us anytime of your choice. There is no issue on that. And how does blocks actually reflecting two different colors? You can see I inserted these values: set LED on background color to green and set LED off to the background color red. So whenever we are executing the task, it is actually the mobile application itself actually following our task. So you will learn how to build application from scratch. So first will be Scratch programming. Second will be your code, the Tinkercad 3D platform and simulation. Third will be the MIT App Inventor. Fourth will be your embedded C++ programming. And fifth, we are going to cover the complete Python programming in our classroom program. So even though you can see some of the contents and some of the projects mentioned in the LMS portal itself, so I will ping you once after this class today with the credential and everything for the LMS portal, so that at least you will have the access to the previous preview classroom programs. Okay. So any questions so far from the teacher side? If you do have any doubts related to today's classroom program or any of the doubts related to the whole journey, then you can ask me on. Otherwise, after that, I will conclude this session. Okay. For today. Next time we will join again and further explore this field based on your timings. Yes, sir. You are on mute, sir. Yes.
Sir, we will be able to do this now.
Yes, sir. If you want to talk to any of the teachers who are already integrated with us, then I will help you with the mobile number for the same. Do not ask me because you know well how the market is and are, right? So if you ask a manufacturer what is the quality of your product, then they will probably say my product is superior, my dahi is sweeter than yours, right? They will probably say the same.
Sir,
But
basically, we have throughout the
hmm,
our journey in teaching, we have learned all about normal programming only,
yeah.
and suddenly it has changed. So that is what we are thinking. Ki, are we able to cope with that?
Conventional programming, the programming we were following earlier is completely different to the program we are going to do in the robotics part, because we are talking about embedded programmings. We are talking about the hardware programmings, in which you will see those things in action in real life rather than the user interface development in the programming environment, right? So yes, I'm all here to help you out from the basic. So as I started today, you can see the how basic approach I'm taking. So I will start with the basic one, even though if you look into the syllabus part, the basic electronics will be covered. I will explain you the register, the color code of the resistance and everything. And you will go through the simulation to do the various experiment. Okay, let me show you one thing in this one, in the sensor itself. I believe it is not in there. Okay, fine. Let me show you one thing, sir. If I open up this one, the 4 preview classes. So even though the basic of the C is also included in your training session, sir. So we will do some of the C++ arithmetic operation to boost our concept and recall some of the past memories. And I will explain those things in details. Even though if I discuss the motherboards or the microcontroller in details now, I will explain individual things on the board itself. If we talk in terms of the nano, then you can see how well it is properly explained in here. And we will not limit ourselves with the Arduino platform. We will explore the Node MCU, other microcontrollers. We will also explore the other part of other Arduino products like the Uno boards, and in details the Node MCU, the ESP8266 boards, the Raspberry boards. So I will give you overall insight for individual topics. You don't have to worry about anything, because from my learning perspective, what is more important for me is the teacher should come with a proper understanding rather than just me just delivering the classes and my class timing is already over. I believe 1 hour the class timing was scheduled, but it is already over. So I'm now not thinking about the timing perspective. So if you are comfortable with 2 hours, 3 hours, and you are ready to learn, then I'm ready to deliver. There is no if and but or certain cases for the same. Okay, everything will be
Okay,
from
sir.
scratch. Even though installation part and how to install and how to operate is properly logged into our LMS portal, and I will personally guide you all to like install those things and go through the installation phase. Okay, you don't have to worry. Yes, any other questions, sir, if you may have? So anyone from the teacher side, any doubts or any queries, any question, you can ask me directly without any hesitation.
So when the credentials of this LMS will be shared?
Let me talk to the team member after this session today, and further I will ping the same information in the group itself. I believe you are one of the you joined one of the group we created for this 10th FEB batch, right?
And sir, you were talking about a Google form. I may have missed the class.
Okay, no problem. I will share that again with you. And especially my number is there, sir. If you may directly ping me directly in my personal message, through personal
Okay,
message,
okay,
it will be
okay,
helpful for me to keep track of the same. Okay.
okay.
Okay, then I'm concluding this session for today. And in our next journey, we will explore more about the robotics and basic electronics first, and we will jump into the 3D designing platform and why you need to learn the 3D designing things. Because sometimes you will find yourself in a place, the time when the student will develop the project, there is no suitable casings or the case part is there. So using the 3D designing, we can actually solve the problem. And apart from the 3D designing, I will help you with one more add-on knowledge in this one, that will be your rapid prototyping. So I will show you, I do have 3D printer.
So you are also going to tell us about actuators and joints or all?
Everything, each and every part of the syllabus will be covered.
Okay.
Actuators, degree of freedoms, everything, sir. In the Tinkercad platform, actually, we are going to do that operation to find out what is the degree of freedom and how can we come up to the answer and the examples for the same. But apart from that, if I have to explain degree of freedom in one sense, then we will use servo motors and the combination of microcontrol to execute the task and see those things in action. So I do have that practical things with me to help you out with the concept. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Okay. So thank you everyone for joining this session today. I hope this session went well for the knowledge gaining perspective. And also, if in case after this session as well, if you do have any of the doubts and queries, then you can drop your question in the group we created for you teachers, and further help me with the message in the group itself. Okay. So thank you so much everyone for your time. Yeah, thank you so much, sir. I'm concluding this session for now. Good day, everyone. Bye-bye.